My parents left me at a gas station. As a joke, let's see how long it takes him to get home. I never went back. 20 years later, they finally found me. This morning, 39 missed calls. I can still feel the heat of that summer day, the sun beating down like a relentless drum as we pulled into that dusty old gas station. My parents, with their usual playful grins, suggested a game to find the most interesting thing around. Little did I know, their idea of fun would leave me standing alone, my heart pounding with the realization that the car was gone. Now, years later, as I drive back to that same forsaken place, the memories flood back, each mile a step closer to confronting the past. My parents, who once played a cruel prank on me, are waiting. But this time the stakes are higher, and the outcome uncertain. What will I find when I step out of my car and face them again? My name is Alex Thompson, and this is the story of how a cruel prank by my parents, Mark and Susan Thompson, changed the course of my life forever. Growing up, my parents were known for their peculiar sense of humor, often playing pranks that ranged from mildly amusing to downright cruel. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened on that fateful day when I was just 9 years old. It was a typical summer afternoon, the sun beating down mercilessly as we drove back from a family reunion. The car was filled with laughter, the kind that only comes from too much time with relatives. My parents, in their usual playful mood, decided to pull over at a dusty old gas station on the outskirts of town. The air was thick with the scent of gasoline and the distant hum of cicadas. I remember the heat waves shimmering above the asphalt, making the world look like it was melting. My dad, with a mischievous grin, announced we needed to stretch our legs. I was eager to escape the confines of the car, to feel the freedom of open space, even if it was just a barren lot beside a rundown station. As we stepped out, my mom, with a twinkle in her eye, suggested we play a game. "Let's see who can find the most interesting thing in this place," she said, her voice dripping with faux excitement. My dad nodded in agreement, his eyes scanning the area with a look I now recognize as calculated. I, naive and trusting, darted off, my small legs carrying me towards what I thought was an adventure. The gas station, with its peeling paint and forgotten corners, seemed like a playground of mysteries. I rummaged through old magazines, peered into dusty. The gas station was one of those forgotten places, with peeling paint and a single flickering neon sign that buzzed like an angry insect. My parents, chuckling to themselves, told me to go inside and buy some snacks. "Take your time, Alex," my dad said with a wink. "We'll wait right here." I remember the bell above the door jingling as I entered, the smell of oil and old coffee filling my nostrils. The cashier, an old man with a face like weathered leather, barely glanced up from his newspaper. I took my time, choosing between candy bars and chips, unaware of the plan unfolding outside. The choices seemed endless, each wrapper promising a different adventure. I finally settled on a bag of chips and a chocolate bar, the kind that had a creamy center that would melt in the heat. When I returned, the car was gone. At first, I thought it was another one of their pranks. I waited, expecting them to drive back around any second, laughing at my gullibility. The sun was still high, casting sharp shadows that stretched across the cracked pavement. I sat on the curb, my snacks beside me, trying to convince myself this was just another game, a test of patience or perhaps a lesson in independence. But minutes turned into an hour, and the reality began to sink in. The laughter from the car, the playful banter, it all felt like a distant memory now. The cicadas' song grew louder, almost mocking in its persistence. My heart started to race, not from the thrill of a prank, but from the dawning fear of being truly alone. I looked around, hoping to see my parents' car or any sign of life, but the panic set in as the night grew colder. I wandered around the gas station, hoping to find someone, anyone, who could help. The attendant, a grizzled old man named Hank, took pity on me. He let me stay in the small back room where he kept his cot. Over the next few days, I learned that my parents had indeed left me as a joke, thinking I'd find my way home or someone would take me in. Hank, however, had seen this kind of neglect before. He contacted child services, but by then, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going back to parents who could abandon me so callously. With Hank's help, I was placed in foster care, where I eventually found a new family who cherished me. Years passed, and I built a life far from where I started. I changed my name to Alex Reed, studied hard, and became a successful software developer. My past was a closed chapter, or so I thought. One morning, my phone buzzed incessantly, showing 39 missed calls from an unknown number. A chill ran down my spine, a feeling I hadn't experienced since that night at the gas station. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen. Finally, I answered. "Hello?" My voice was cautious, almost a whisper. "Alex, it's your mother." The voice on the other end was shaky, filled with a mix of hope and desperation. My heart skipped a beat. My mother. The woman who had left me, now reaching out after all these years. "Why are you calling?" I managed to keep my tone neutral, but inside, a storm was brewing. There was a pause, a heavy silence that seemed to stretch for an eternity. "Your father, he's not well. He's in the hospital. We need to talk, Alex. Please." The words hit me like a physical blow. My father, the man who had driven away, leaving me behind, was now in a hospital bed. The irony wasn't lost on me. The parents who had once played a cruel prank on me were now in need. I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. The calls were from a private investigator hired by my biological parents. They had finally tracked me down after all these years. My heart raced as I listened to the voicemail. The voice on the other end was apologetic, explaining that my parents were ill and wanted to see me before it was too late. I was torn. The memories of abandonment were vivid, yet there was a part of me that wondered if they had changed, if they regretted their actions. After much deliberation, I decided to meet them, but not without conditions. I would meet them at the same gas station where they left me to see if they could face the place of their mistake. As I drove towards the old gas station, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. The road stretched out before me, each mile marker, a reminder of the journey I had taken alone. The landscape was familiar, yet everything seemed different through the eyes of an adult. The trees were taller, the road less traveled, but the gas station, with its peeling paint and flickering neon sign, stood as a monument to my past. I pulled into the lot, the gravel crunching under my tires like the bones of old memories. The place hadn't changed much. Time seemed to have forgotten it as much as I had tried to forget my parents. The same old man, Hank, was still there, his face more lined, his hair now completely white. He recognized me instantly, his eyes softening with a mix of surprise and sadness. "Alex?" he called out, his voice rough from years of shouting over the hum of cicadas. I nodded, stepping out of my car, feeling the weight of the past pressing down on me. "Hank, it's been a long time." He walked over, his steps slow but steady. "I heard you were coming. Your parents, they've been asking about you. They're inside." My heart pounded in my chest as I approached the door. The bell above it jingled, a sound that transported me back to that day when I was 9, when my world had crumbled. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of gasoline and old coffee, just like before. There they were, sitting at a small table. The gas station looked even more dilapidated than I remembered. The neon sign now completely dark, as if it had given up its last flicker of life. My parents were there, looking older, frailer, and visibly nervous. The reunion was awkward, filled with apologies and tears. They explained they had realized their mistake almost immediately, but were too ashamed to come back for me. They had spent years searching, hoping to make amends. My mother, Susan, handed me a small box. Inside was a collection of letters they had written to me over the years, never sent, filled with regret and love. Each letter was a window into their lives, their struggles, and their unending sorrow for what they had done. The confrontation was intense. I expressed my pain, my confusion, and the life I had built without them. They listened, their faces etched with sorrow. My voice shook as I recounted the nights I spent alone, the fear, the abandonment. "How could you think this was funny?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, the hurt palpable in every word. They didn't have an answer, just more apologies, more tears. My father, Mark, spoke of the guilt that had eaten at him every day, how they had tried to find me, but I had changed my name, moved, and built a life they couldn't reach. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow over the scene, I stood there, the weight of their regret and my own unresolved feelings hanging heavy in the air. The gas station, this place of my childhood trauma, now bore witness to a different kind of pain. I looked at the letters, each one a testament to their remorse. My mother's handwriting was shaky, the ink smeared in places as if she had cried while writing. My father's letters were more formal, but the pain was there, in every carefully chosen word. The decision loomed before me, stark and unforgiving. Could I forgive them? Could I let go of the years of hurt, the nights of longing for a family that had left me? The letters in my hands felt like a bridge, a fragile connection to a past I had. After hours of talking, I realized that while I could never forget what they did, I could perhaps forgive, not for them, but for me, to release the burden of resentment I had carried for so long. The conversation was raw, filled with moments of silence where the weight of our shared history pressed down on us. My parents, Mark and Susan, looked at me with eyes that had seen too many sleepless nights, their faces lined with the regret of their past actions. They spoke of the years they spent trying to find me, the guilt that gnawed at them, and the realization of how deeply they had hurt me. We agreed to start anew, cautiously. I would visit them, but I made it clear that my life was now my own, built on the foundation of the love and stability I found elsewhere. They nodded, understanding that their role in my life would be different, less central, but perhaps in time, meaningful in a new way. As I drove away from the gas station, leaving, my parents behind once more, this time by choice, I felt a strange sense of closure. The road ahead was lit by the setting sun, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch towards a future I could now shape on my own terms. The landscape, once a backdrop to my abandonment, now looked peaceful, almost forgiving. My phone buzzed, again this time with a text from my foster parents checking in on me. "Just wanted to see how you're doing, Alex. We're here for you always." The message was simple, but it carried the weight of unconditional love, the kind I had longed for as a child. I smiled, knowing that no matter what, I was never truly alone. The gas station, with its peeling paint and now silent neon sign, faded into the distance. But the memories, both painful and healing, remained with me. They were part of my story, a story of survival, of finding family in unexpected places, and of learning to forgive not just others, but myself for the years I spent in anger. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it felt like I was driving towards something, not away from it. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.